In 1986, in Pepperell, Massachusetts, the Bowen family began experiencing strange things in their home. Frank Bowen and his two teenage daughters, Tina and Key, started noticing things that couldn't be explained. First, there were weird noises. They would hear tapping inside the walls and footsteps in the house when no one else was supposed to be home. Furniture would be rearranged while they were out. The toilet would be flushed by invisible hands. They would find half-drunk cartons of milk left on the counter. But most disturbing of all, they began finding messages scrawled on the basement walls in what looked like blood. They would later find out to be ketchup, which is also horrifying and disgusting. The messages were cryptic and threatening. The terrifying climax of the haunting occurred during a seance that the girls had with a friend. They asked, "Is anyone here?" and heard a loud knocking response from the walls. Shortly after, the girls saw furniture toppling over, and in a moment of pure horror, saw writing appear on a wall right in front of them. Fearing for his daughter's safety, Frank Bowen eventually conducted a ruthless search of the house. He discovered that a heavy cabinet blocking a crawlspace access had been moved. When he inspected the closet in one of the bedrooms, he found a false wall. Behind the wall was a man named Daniel LaPlante. Daniel had been living in the crawlspaces between the walls for months. He had created a small living area with a sleeping bag and supplies he'd stolen from their kitchen. And he wasn't just hiding, he was actively tormenting them. He had watched them from the air vents, come out when they slept to eat their food, and terrorized them for his own amusement. When Frank found him, LaPlante wasn't countering. He was painted in face paint and armed with a hatchet, looking like a character from a horror movie. He held the family hostage briefly, forcing them into a bedroom, but one of the daughters managed to escape and call the police, and LaPlante was arrested. If the story ended there, it would be the creepy case of a man living in the walls. But it gets worse. LaPlante was charged with burglary and other offenses, but due to being a juvenile, he was released on bail to his mother's custody while awaiting trial. He didn't stay out of trouble. In December 1987, a year after the Bowen incident, LaPlante broke into the home of the Gustafson family in nearby Townsend, Massachusetts. He murdered 33-year-old Priscilla Gustafson, who was a nursery teacher who was pregnant at the time, and then also killed her two young children. He was eventually caught after a massive manhunt, found hiding in a dumpster, and sentenced to multiple life sentences. The LaPlante case is an example of a concept called Phrogging, a nightmare where someone that you do not know is secretly living inside your house. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people. It's your best friend Kenny, and we are back with another spooky and disturbing story. Before we get to today's story, let's make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Make sure that you like, share, comment, and hit the hype button for the algorithm. Thank you. Your home has an assurance of privacy and exclusivity of your own access. Your residence is the ultimate comfort space of your life, a controlled environment where you get to be yourself and be secure in your solitude. The phenomenon of phrogging, which is secretly hiding in an occupied dwelling by an unauthorized individual, is a radical violation of your space and privacy. Unlike burglary, which is a short interruption for material gain, or squatting, which usually involves the overt occupation of vacant structures, phrogging is parasitic in nature. The perpetrator relies on the host's resources, infrastructure, and ignorance to survive. So what is phrogging? Phrogging is a term that gained traction in legal and media discourse to describe a specific subset of trespassing behaviors. Phrogging evolves when a person secretly moves into an occupied property, utilizing spaces such as basements, attics, crawl spaces, guest rooms, and even deep closets, and living with the homeowners. The intent is sustained habitation. Phroggers have been documented living in homes for periods of time ranging from a few days to over a decade. The term phrogging is derived from two sources. Phrogging refers to the game of leapfrog, symbolizing the transient nomadic nature of some of the perpetrators who hop from one residence to another to evade capture. And phreaking is a term from the hacker culture of the 1970s, implying the exploitation of a system's vulnerabilities. Just as a phreaker exploits telephone networks, a phrogger exploits the architectural and routine-based vulnerabilities of people and their homes. This has been often dismissed as an urban legend, but there is a rise in unwanted residency incidences. Data from 2024 and 2025 indicates a shifting landscape in property crime. Traditional residential burglaries have seen a statistical decline, down 13% from 2018 to 2022. But reports of home invasion linked to stalking and unauthorized entry have surged, with some analyses suggesting a 60% increase in phrogging-style behaviors. It seems like things like alarms and reinforced doors deter smash-and-grab burglaries, but the criminal element adapts by seeking stealthy, long-term integration inside the home. The rise of phrogging is also linked to the housing crisis, with homelessness reaching record highs of over 582,000 individuals in the U.S. as of 2022. Rental costs soaring. For these individuals, the risk of arrest is outweighed by the immediate necessity of climate control shelter and access to facilities. The case of Theodore Edward Coneys, who is known as the Denver Spiderman, is a historical example of phrogging. In September 1941, Coneys, a 59-year-old drifter plagued by poor health and poverty, broke into the Denver home of 73-year-old Philip Peters. Finding the house momentarily empty, Coneys discovered a small trapdoor leading to a narrow attic space. What began as a temporary refuge evolved into a 9-month occupation. Coneys adapted to the cramped, uninsulated conditions of the attic, coming out only when Peters was away to steal food and water. Coneys existed in near total silence and darkness for weeks at a time. On October 17, 1941, Peters discovered Coneys in the kitchen. In the ensuing struggle, Coneys bludgeoned Peters to death with a cast iron stove shaker, striking him 37 times. Rather than fleeing the scene of the murder, Coneys just returned to the attic. For months following the murder, Coneys lived above the crime scene. He observed the police investigation through vents and cracks. He remained in the house even as housekeepers returned to maintain the property. These housekeepers reported eerie feelings and strange noises, which were dismissed by law enforcement as superstition, which is a common theme in Phrogging cases where victims are gaslit by the implausibility of the crime. It wasn't until July 1942, when detectives conducted a stakeout inside the home to investigate the haunting, that they saw Coneys' legs dangling from the trap door. Detective Fred Zarnow remarked, "A man would have to be a spider to stand it so long up there," coining the term, the Denver Spiderman, that would define the case. Once a Phrogger establishes a secure perimeter within the home, the perceived safety of the concealment often outweighs the risk of flight. The attic becomes a sanctuary, and the Phrogger develops a territorial claim over it, leading to violent defense of the space if they are discovered. Another case is the case of Walburga Dolly Oesterreich and her lover Otto Sanhuber. In the early 20th century, Dolly moved Sanhuber into the attic of her home she shared with her wealthy husband in Milwaukee. Sanhuber lived in the attic for 10 years, a bat-like existence where he wrote fiction by candlelight and maintained a sexual relationship with Dolly during the day. The arrangement persisted through a move to Los Angeles when Sanhuber continued to live in the attic. The situation culminated in 1922 when Sanhuber overheard a domestic dispute and emerged from the attic to shoot Dolly's husband. Even after the murder, Sanhuber continued to live in the attic for years to avoid implication. This is an example of a consensual Phrogger. It highlights the capability of a human being to erase their public identity entirely, existing solely within the private sphere of another's home. This requires a psychological disassociation and a suppression of the social self, traits often found in modern stalkers. The survivalist Phrogger is the most common demographic, especially today, driven by the collapse of social safety nets. These individuals view the occupied home as a place for resources. They are generally nonviolent and seek to remain invisible to prolong their access to these resources. The case of the Fukuoka closet woman, a 57-year-old Japanese man who installed security cameras after noticing food disappearing from his refrigerators. The footage revealed a stranger wandering his apartment. Police discovered 58-year-old Tatsuko Horikawa hiding in the upper compartment of a deep closet. She had lived there for a year. Horikawa was described as neat and clean. She showered when the owner was away and moved a mattress into the closet for comfort. Her success relied on her discipline. She minimized her caloric footprint on the house, stealing just enough to survive without triggering immediate alarm. This micro-theft strategy is a hallmark of the survivalist Phrogger. In 2025, Nieman Bukhar was arrested for living in the crawlspace of a condo complex in Clackamas County, Oregon. Their discovery had tapped into the building's electrical grid to power television lights and charging stations for electronics. The space is furnished with a bed and drug paraphernalia, meth. The discovery was prompted by strange noises and damage to the crawlspace doors noted by neighbors. The case shows the evolution of the Phrogger from a passive hider to an active alteration of the property. Modern Phroggers want electricity and Wi-Fi as much as they want food, leading to more detective signatures, such as power spikes. The Stalker Phrogger is driven by a desire to be close to a specific individual. This type is very dangerous, as the intrusion is often a form of psychological warfare or a prelude to violence. In 2012, a woman in Rock Hill, South Carolina reported hearing noises in her attic. Her nephew investigated and found the woman's ex-boyfriend sleeping in the heating unit. The intruder had manipulated the air vents to create a peephole, allowing him to look directly down into the woman's bedroom. When he was discovered, he reportedly fled the scene smiling, a detail that suggests he's a sociopath, and he was satisfied in the terror he had induced. For these type of Phroggers, the high is derived from knowing they are watching the victim while the victim believes they are alone. Another example is Amaya McBride. Amaya McBride and her roommates noticed subtle irregularities, such as clothing missing, a toilet seat left up, and a mysterious blonde hair in the shower drain. They dismissed these as ghostly occurrences or memory lapses. The roommates eventually found 30-year-old Drew Swofford hiding in the closet wearing McBride's clothes. He had the hacker mentality of knowing their routines perfectly to avoid detection. Victims often rationalize the signs of Phrogging as supernatural phenomenon because the reality that a human is living with them is too disturbing to accept. That's right. They believe that a ghost is a more acceptable thing than that a human is living with them. The predatory Phrogger is the rarest but most lethal. They use the home as a base for operations to plan and execute violent crimes against the residents. In 2019, James and Brittany Campbell returned from a vacation to find their Honolulu home occupied by Ezekiel Zayas. While initially appearing as a burglary, Forensic analysis of the Campbell's computers revealed a horrifying truth. Zayas had created a text document titled The Omnivore Trials, a Rehabilitation for Rat-like People. The document contained detailed logs of the family's activities and Zayas' plans to perform reconstructive surgeries on them. He possessed intimate knowledge of their reproductive struggles, information he could only have gathered from listening to private conversations from within the walls. Zayas was arrested and later killed his cellmate in prison, confirming he was a violent, dangerous human. This case is the Phrogging nightmare scenario. The intruder who is not hiding to survive, but hiding to hunt. There is a direct correlation between the affordability of housing and the frequency of unlawful residency crimes. With rent inflation outpacing wage growth and the criminalization of poverty making sleeping in public places like parks, cars, a legally risky activity, the occupied home becomes a target. Unlike an abandoned building, an occupied home has running water, climate control, and stock pantries. For an unhoused individual, the risk of arrest in a home is weighed against the certainty of exposure and hunger on the street. A case in Florida involved a man who posed as a home buyer, asked for keys to clean the carpets before closing, and then simply moved in, refusing to leave. This was blurring the line between frogging and squatting, using the idea of a real estate transaction to gain entry. The term frogging has become massive because of TikTok starting in 2021. Videos explain the concept purporting to show froggers garnered millions of views. Social media challenges encourage adolescents to enter homes or live in a store, such as IKEA challenges. While most froggers are desperate or dangerous, a subset of prankster froggers may be motivated by TikTok and Instagram clout. Also, this trend has educated homeowners. The Signs of Froggers videos serve as public service announcements, likely leading to higher reporting rates of incidents that would have been previously ignored. The gig economy has introduced a vulnerability in residential security. The anonymity of platforms like Airbnb allows froggers to audition a home before occupying it. A guest books a legitimate stay for 2 nights. During this time, they copy keys, learn the alarm code, or unlock a secondary entry point, such as a basement window. They check out officially, only to return hours later to re-enter and hide in the attic or a locked owner's closet. Airbnb hosts have recounted stories of guests who refused to leave or guests who damaged the property in ritualistic ways. So how do you catch a frogger? Well, froggers engage in microtheft. They consume resources in quantities small enough to be attributed to waste or forgetfulness. Eating a single slice of bread, drinking directly from the milk carton, or taking dry goods that are rarely checked. The modern frogger also connects to a home network. This is often their primary entertainment and communication link. Detecting unknown addresses on a router is a key forensic method. Froggers track the residents' schedules. When the family leaves for work or school, the frogger emerges to shower and use the toilet. Because of the likelihood of victims of frogging to dismiss signs as ghosts or forgetfulness, awareness is a primary defense. They might see objects moving on their own, a door left open that was shut, a toilet seat position changed. They might hear unexplained footsteps creaking or muffled coughing. They might smell unwashed bodies or waste. There might be strange markings or food wrappers in odd places or damage to entry points. Homeowners should regularly audit connected devices. A device named Ben's iPhone on a network where there is no one named Ben is a red flag. Reviewing logs from smart home sensors is also a good idea. A motion alert in the living room at 10 a.m. when everyone is at work or at school could be an indicator. Animals often sense intruders before humans. Persistent barking at a specific wall or ceiling shouldn't be ignored. A sudden spike in electricity usage without changing the homeowner's habits is a clue. Frogging represents a disturbing evolution in property crime. It transforms the home from a castle, a fortress, into a shared space with an unknown individual. The perpetrators could range from someone just trying to survive to a predator, and they exploit the very assumptions of safety that define the home. Frogging is statistically rare compared to traditional burglary, but the psychological impact of frogging is much worse, often leaving victims with long-term trauma and a permanent loss of the sense of security. As technology gets better, the frogging methods will get better too. The smart home offers new ways to detect them, but there are also new ways for them to survive. The defense against invisible roommates requires not just better locks, but a heightened awareness of the physical and digital boundaries of one's life. One thing that's clear, if food is disappearing, you're hearing strange noises and creaking floorboards, it might not be a ghost. It might be a living person living in your space. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you like, share, and comment on this video for the algorithm. Hit the hype button, please. Follow me on Blue Sky, Twitter, and TikTok. My username is The Spooky Lawyer. If there's a disturbing story you'd like me to cover, leave a comment and tell me about it, or send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a link in my bio and in the description of this video to buy me a coffee, so you could buy me a coffee. Or you can become a member of this channel. For the $1.99 tier, you can get access to exclusive content, including exclusive videos, as well as access to my videos before they go public. I appreciate you considering this. You also support me by continuing to watch, share, comment, and like my videos. And I really do appreciate you watching my videos. And please stay spooky.